That's right. My Bruce Wayne gear is here, or my Batman gear. It's TexAgs Rewind, presented by T-Mobile. Great show we had for you today. OB breaking down the college football playoffs and the rankings out there and the expansion. He was heated today. We like that. We also had Trevor Knight talking Zach Calzada. He's seen how it is to go on the road in the SEC, especially for your first real tough one. I know Zach's had a tough one on the road before, but this is going to be a different atmosphere against Ole Miss. We also had Chris Landry giving his thoughts on the rise of A&M and their contest coming up this weekend against Ole Miss. Bronny alert here, recruiting country, a recruiting update, all that and more on TexAgs Rewind, presented by T-Mobile. So would you be in favor of a format that had the top 2 teams from each of the 5 conferences, Power 5 conferences, to get in and have those 10 and then 2 at large? What would be the best, most fair if we're going 12?
Okay, to me, first of all, we would never go 12.
Okay.
If you want fair, you just said fair, then you don't go 12, because as soon as you go 12, that means one team or 4 teams only have to win 2 games to win a national championship, and somebody else has to win 3. How is that fair?
Not fair.
So, to me, you go 8 or you go 16. I think the best way to go is 8. I would take the 5 conference champions. Then there would be some language written into a contract that what Notre Dame has to do, what a group 5 team has to do, and then maybe something like the old BCS computers to decide what at-large teams gets in. But to me, that's I want as much of the human element out of it as possible in terms of making of choosing who gets in. I wouldn't have a problem with 16, but I think you start getting into that area where you're asking your fans to travel so much, because if I'd have 8 in the first round, would be on the home site of the higher ranked team.
So you could have 8 and then the conference championship being a de facto playoff eliminator?
No, it would not necessarily. It would be an automatic bid. You could lose your conference championship game and still get in, especially if there's not an undefeated Power 5. Plus, I wouldn't just say undefeated is the only requirement for a group of 5 team to get in.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to beat X amount of teams in a Power 5.
Yeah, I mean, this is the biggest game of the year, obviously, because it's the next one. But we've circled this one on the calendar for a long time. Alabama is Alabama. We knew that. We got past that one. It was amazing, but it's in the past now. This is a really talented Ole Miss football team with one of the best quarterbacks in the country leading that group. I think he's leading the team, if I'm not mistaken, in obviously passing, but also rushing.
Yes.
Just a super talented player. And you're going to a place that when they are kind of rocking and rolling out there in the Grove, it's a difficult place to play. But just in general, my first road game was at Auburn. Going on the road to play in the SEC, it's an energy battle. It is an absolute energy battle. And a lot of people playing in high school and in other stadiums, they don't understand what that means. When the energy is sucked out of your program because you've got a home crowd against you, it is difficult to recreate that. So what I'm looking for is not only Zach, but the rest of that team, whether they're playing or not, to create their own energy on the sidelines. That's going to be huge this week. That's going to instill confidence in Zach, instill confidence in that offense, and obviously that defense as well. You always hear, though, defense can travel, and defense most oftentimes does travel. Those guys are, they bang their heads in this stuff all day long. So I don't know if they know the difference or not, right? But an offense is the side of the ball where you really got to take that into account, create that own energy, create that confidence. And what I love and what I've seen out of Zach out of the past couple of weeks is he has been able, obviously, to fight through injury, which shows a lot about just his grit. But you can see when he does make a mistake, the way that he is bouncing back much quicker than I think he was here at the beginning of the season. He believes in himself. He believes in the guys around him, and he's going to have to do that this week to get a big win on the road.
It's a little bit of a different test every week and different style. So this is going to be interesting. This is one, I think, this week what I'm looking forward to watching is this is going to be more on the offense, meaning you've got to be able to run the football, which I think you can against this Ole Miss defense that's not as good as Auburn's defense. So controlling the football and maybe finishing better in the red zone is kind of the challenge here. Defensively, this is certainly a tough challenge because of Ole Miss's offense and how they employ the quarterback in the run game. Bo Nix really doesn't run. He runs the throw, whereas Corral will run, even though he's banged up, will run to run. And he can keep, take a 3rd and 6 where you've got everything covered and accounted for. It limits what you do. So you'd like to play a lot of eyes on the quarterback in that situation in some zone or pattern match, but then, you've got to make sure that you really are not in a lot of man situations with a lot of blitz pressure where you get caught out of your seams and he takes off and runs and, it's the first down. So I've been really impressed with what I've seen. They've progressed a little bit better than even I thought they would. Of course, that's all relative, David, right? To, teams. Some other teams are just not as good as I thought they would be.
Bayou Ag says, do we have a gap at a position for 2022 running back ?
Yeah, and their main focus has been on Le'Veon Moss out of Baton Rouge for a long time, and we'll see if they can close him out. But I've always been of the opinion that they don't have to take one unless they get a guy they really, really want, and Le'Veon Moss is a guy that they've really, really wanted and coveted for a long time. And so I think they'll target all their focus on him and see if they can get him, and then if they don't, maybe they don't take one at all.
He's the guy who was committed initially to Alabama,
right.
Correct? And
he's
then
decommitted. Because in state in 23, you've obviously got a kid like Reuben Owens, who is one of the better backs the state's produced in a while, and national 5-star kind of kid. And there's also a handful of other really quality backs in 23 where if that's a class that you wanted to take 2 again, you could.
So is there anything you can provide on Reuben Owens? He came by last weekend, right?
Well, yeah, I've interviewed Reuben. I was at his game. A&M doing a great job, and I think the appeal of playing in the SEC in his home state. El Campo is a A&M heavy community, so he's been around a lot of Aggies. But Georgia and LSU and Bama are not going to make it easy. Texas is fighting to stay in there as well. I would think, though, that I would think A&M and Georgia probably right now would have would say are the leaders. Reuben did not say that. Just my perspective, my gut feel in the situation is that those two would be out in front. But came to A&M on Saturday, had a great time, and was at Alabama. So, just the experience of those 2 games stands to reason that A&M is going to be in this thing for the long haul. And I think a lot of folks around the country would say that A&M has got as good a shot or better shot than anybody to get him.
Do you think that we can keep Tyree for 2022? And if not, do we have anyone like him that is an elite speed rusher currently on campus or incoming?
Well, incoming, I can answer. The other 2, that's a ballpark that Billy hits.
Yeah, right? That's a Billy one.
But in terms of the current class, Malik Silla certainly could turn into that when you look at his length and his twitchiness with that frame. They're after a guy like Enow White, who is a very good edge rusher. You've got Shamar Stewart would be considered a strong side kind of guy. Anthony Lucas would be your swing DeMarvin Leal kind of guy. Walter Nolan, from a interior standpoint, so certainly get after the passer. Into that note, so could Jaden Scarlett. When you look at the way Jaden Scarlett plays, He's super quick off the ball. So they're adding a lot of twitch and explosion into this recruiting class.
Who does Walter Nolan compare to?
Nobody.
Not an Ed Oliver, not anybody.
He dwarfs Ed Oliver.
Right.
I mean, you want to talk about quicks? Yeah, he plays with Ed Oliver's quicks. You want to talk about explosion and pop out of his hips? He does that like Dalen Mack. You want to talk about just sheer mass? I don't know that A&M's had a guy in there like that, but he's bigger than McKinley Jackson.
Yeah.
You want to talk about power, like Justin Matabike? He's got that. They haven't signed anybody like him. Myles Garrett. But as a 3 technique, I mean, that's where he's rated, right? There's nobody like Walter.
All right, friends, do me a favor, enemies too. Like this video, comment on this video, subscribe to this video, get the algorithm up. Let's keep it going. It is TexAgs Rewind presented by T-Mobile.